More and more frequently, people are coming into my office with the goal of wanting to do a show or compete, which is great. However, more and more frequently also, people are coming into my office with the goal of competing who have no idea what it means or is at the basic core level. So usually when someone comes in and asks, can I do a show? Can you train me for a show? Can you prep me for a show? One of my first questions is, can you get up there for me and do some quarter turns? They don't know what they are. Well, have you ever been to a show? No, I have not. Have you seen one, like on YouTube? No, I haven't. Well, what makes you think you want to do one? Well, a friend of mine did one. They said it was a great time. I will not take on a client whose reason for doing a show is that. And again, like I said, I'm all for the goal of competing. I think it's an amazing pursuit. I think it teaches you a lot about yourself. One of the most amazing ways to learn about time management, intensity, and work for a specific goal and results equals, effort and etc. But know what you're getting yourself into. This is not to be taken lightly. It's a huge, all-encompassing pursuit. And I think before you actually decide to get prepped for a show, which is going to be at least a 12-week prospect, if not a 24-week prospect or more, depending on where you're at, I think you should know a few things about what prepping is going to entail, what you're going to be in for, what you're going to be subjected to during the course of a prep. So let's get into it. Number one, you should be prepared for the fact that you're not going to be gaining any muscle once you start a prep. You have to put yourself, in order to lose fat, you have to put yourself in a calorie deficit. The moment you do that, muscle growth is over. The best you can hope to do is maintain that muscle mass while you lose the fat that you're going to lose based on the fact that you're in a calorie deficit. So forget about gaining any muscle to any appreciable amount. You might gain a little bit of muscle in the beginning of the prep, but that will soon stop. Since you're in a calorie deficit, you don't have the building blocks to make more muscle tissue. But you have enough, just enough, to sustain what muscle you have while you lose fat. Here's the thing. Make sure you've had a really good off season. Make sure you've put on all the muscle that you want, at least for that year, before you start a prep, because it's not going to increase from that point. In fact, you might even lose a little bit of it, which obviously is worst case scenario, but you're definitely not going to gain any. So that's number one. The last 6 weeks, you don't really need to lift heavy. In fact, lifting weights at that point, the only purpose of it really is to tell the body that carrying muscle is important, to send the stimulus to the body to hold on to muscle while you lose the fat. So the resistance training is not going to be something that's hugely intense, very heavy. It doesn't need to be this all-out bombastic bombardment with weights. So all you're doing is you're just sending the signal to the body to hold on to muscle while you lose the fat. Your tight shirts are not going to be so tight anymore. Those shirts that you bought because it really hugs your arms, at some point you're going to get to the point where you've lost so much fat that your arm circumference, leg circumference is going to reduce. At that point, that tight sleeve is not going to be so tight anymore. And that is a huge mind fuck. So the tendency is to, when that happens, you're either you start eating more, but you can't do that. You're on a set amount of calories to create and sustain that deficit. So in order to do that, you have to kind of ignore the fact that the extra medium shirt you bought because you like the way it fit, not going to fit that great until you go back into a reverse diet. You will feel the opposite of every reason you got into bodybuilding. You got into bodybuilding to feel big, to feel strong, to feel powerful, and to feel energetic, and you're going to feel the opposite of all those things. You're going to be weak, you're going to be smaller, you're going to feel lethargic. So everything that you got into bodybuilding for to feel is going to be the opposite. Again, a mind fuck, but something you have to go through in order to achieve the ultimate in conditioning. Because you're not going to be a huge person, most likely, by the time you get down to, not as huge as you were. Put it this way, if you're walking around at 240, if you do a really good job at the fat loss, you might end up at 198, who knows? But just as long as you're conditioned, that's all that matters. So keep that in mind. If you've prepped correctly, you will be lacking a sex drive. Totally lacking a sex drive. Not towards the very end, but again, it does happen, and all your energy goes into just trying to train. You're on such low calories and low carbohydrates possibly that, you don't have much energy for anything else. So sex kind of becomes like this, either it's a chore or something you just can't do at all. You can't perform at all, or you just put it on the back burner until this thing's over. So just be prepared for that. And also your significant other needs to be prepared for that. The diet is maddeningly repetitive and just designed for function and for results and not for pleasure. So you end up eating the same things at the same time every day, day in and day out for weeks on end. If that's something that you cannot see yourself doing, don't even bother with embarking on a prep, because you won't make it. The one downfall to getting in amazing shape is that after the show is over, you're always going to think you're fat. Because when you go from being 3% body fat to anything like 10%, 12%, that in comparison is always going to be like you're out of shape for the rest of your life. So just know that once you've achieved this pristine, amazing condition, that anything that you are after that is just seem like inadequate as far as conditioning is concerned. You're always going to feel like you're too fat, even when you're lean by traditional standards, by normal human standards. Invariably, you will end up losing a few friends along the way. It happens. With a prep that lasts 6 months, you pretty much are on lockdown the entire time. There's not much you can do. You can't really go out for drinks or eat normal human food. Social interaction gets less and less and less as you become more and more immersed in this very restrictive lifestyle. Your days are calculated to the second. Every day is spent just either prepping food, eating food, cleaning Tupperware.
You don't want me to open this closet. It's a mess, but it's bodybuilder life. If you compete, you bodybuild or anything like that, Tupperwares are your best friends.
Training or doing cardio or doing your abs, something involved with the prep. There's not much room or time left over for anyone else. So you end up losing those friends who aren't patient enough to wait until you're done this pursuit. Another thing is they also sometimes get very jealous of what you're doing, and they don't like the fact that you're looking so good. It's a very, very common thing for them to become jealous of what's going on. So you might lose them in that capacity too, or you might lose them temporarily, or you might lose them permanently. That happens as well. So be prepared for that. That's a tough one sometimes. The last week, what we call peak week, is absolutely interminably miserable. You don't have any water, you don't have any salt, you don't have anything. You are, even as restrictive as the diet was all the way up, it gets even more restrictive the last week. And you're running on fumes at that point. And after you get spray tanned, you can't shower, so you end up stinking. So you want to shower, you want to drink water, you want something that's not chicken. You're eating everything dry because you're not having any water. So if you're eating oats, you're eating them dry and just chewing them for 20 minutes. A lot of people end up quitting that last week, believe it or not. They make it that far. And then peak week is so horrendous that they end up, quitting that last week. Can you imagine that after all that work? But they do. It's rough. It's rough. Peak week. Look out for it. It's an expensive sport. You'll spend thousands of dollars before this thing is over. Between food, supplementation, suits if you're a girl, the bling, everything. It all adds up. Entering the contest, getting your NPC card. If you're doing crossover divisions, each division is like $100, $150 to cross over. It ends up adding up. This is an expensive sport. If you don't have the money put aside for this, plus you have to get a good coach, which is going to be not cheap if you want somebody who's good. So it ends up costing a pretty penny to do this. So be aware of that. It's not cheap. So basically, the take-home message here is know what you're getting yourself into before you go up to a coach and say, I want to do a show. Because it is something that once you're in it, and you either do it or you don't, and it's not easy. It's one of the most difficult 24/7 endeavors you'll ever do. Even people who've been in the military or been elite athletes who say they want to do a show have faltered because it's unlike anything they've ever done. The diet is relentless. It's 24/7. You never get a break from it. Every day looks exactly the same. training at this time, meals at this time, this at this time, blah, 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 water, gallon of water every day. Not a half a gallon, not 3/4 of a gallon, but a gallon. Not 6 ounces of this, not 8 ounces of this, but 8.5 ounces of this. So it's not for everybody. So before you open your mouth and say, I want to do a show, know what a show is, know what it entails, and know what you'll have to do to be on stage looking the way you need to look to be on stage. Okay?